Good evening. This is the April 22nd, 2025, 6 p.m. meeting of the Leominster Conservation Commission. The public is encouraged to follow along with the meeting using the posted agenda. I'd like to ask anyone attending the meeting to please silence all of your devices. My name is Jesse Averka. I am the conservation agent for the city of Leominster. Before we begin, please allow me to confirm which members are present. Bob Sykard.
Present. Accounted for.
Very nice. Nick Venti.
Present.
Mike
Seeker.
Siki.
Here.
And Vice Chairman Richard Bullock.
Here.
All right, well, so Rich is going to be acting chairman tonight since Chuck didn't join us, so I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody here in the audience who wants to address the commission about something that's not on the agenda? You're here for the agenda. Something excellent. Then we'll move on to the agenda. The first item is a request for determination of applicability from CSX Transportation, represented by Kip Callahan, with VHB, which is Vanessa Hengen Bruslin Inc. Okay. For the confirmed boundaries of wetland resource areas within the CSX Railroad right-of-way in Leominster, Massachusetts. Address is the CSX Railroad right-of-way. Sir, you please introduce yourself.
All right. My name is Kip Callahan. I'm here from VHB on behalf of CSX. And so we've submitted this RDA as part of the process associated with the railroad's 5-year vegetation management plan.
Okay.
The vegetation management plan will be effective 2025 to 2029. And the previous plan was good for the last 5 years. And as part of that process, we need to present essentially these spray restriction areas based on the wetland boundaries to the commission for confirmation of those boundaries. There haven't been any significant changes since 2020. And I rode the line this fall, and we marked these boundaries with oil-based paint on the ties and on the tracks to make it easy for the operators who are spraying the herbicide to see where these boundaries are. And basically what these boundaries are is there are regulations set out for right-of-way management by the pesticide board. It's 333 CMR 11 that designate certain areas as spray restriction areas. So herbicide can't be sprayed within 10 feet of wetlands. And then there's also some other areas related to drinking water protection. I don't believe there are any in Leominster for that. But basically it's either no spray areas, limited spray to once a year, which are buffer zones, and then there's every other year spray for certain drinking water supply areas. So what we can do is we can kind of go through the plans and kind of look at these. We'll talk a little bit about each of these areas.
Can I ask you one question before you go on?
Yeah.
You mentioned the spray paint of the ties, which I think is a great idea. Do you spray each one of the ties or just the both boundaries?
So we do both boundaries. So and we make it kind of directional because the train, not the trains, but the high rail. So I should probably back up a little and explain how the herbicide is applied. So there's a contractor that's hired by CSX, and you'll have received some details about that. A letter from Keith Morris, who worked on the vegetation management plan and the yearly operational plan, has links and some additional details about what herbicides used and what the overall practices are, who the contractor is, etc. But basically what happens is the contractor will have a tank of herbicide that's one of the herbicides on the approved list. And it's a big high rail vehicle, so it's a big tanker truck basically that has the ability to lower the rail wheels. And they have a low pressure boom at the back of the truck that sprays the herbicide down on the ballast. And the reason for that is both they need to keep vegetation from growing that could interfere with the operation of the trains, but mainly this ballast spray is important for keeping herbaceous vegetation under control, because when you get these, especially annual grasses, when they dry out, they become a big fire hazard, especially when they need to grind the rails. So important part of the rail safety is keeping the shape of the rail with that flange at the top, which helps prevent derailments and things. They actually have these special grinding trains that drive along the tracks, and they have these grinders that reshape the rails, but they throw off a lot of sparks, and it's a big fire hazard if they don't keep the vegetation under control.
Well, the brakes can also.
Yeah, the brakes put out slag and sparks, and there's other stuff as well.
Yeah.
But that's the main reason that this is such an important process for them.
How far out from the track does the spray usually go?
So the spray pattern is basically 12 feet from the center line of the track.
Okay.
And so it's pretty much constricted just to the ballast. And so the way that we did these zones is because you can't spray within 10 feet, it's anything that's marked as a no spray zone is when there's a wetland within 22 feet of the center line. And these depicted zones on the maps are pretty much they're buffered from that center line of the rail, and they represent that 22 feet on either side. So these depictions are true to scale for what the width of that spray pattern is.
Okay.
So we can kind of get started here, and we'll go through. I believe, is this on the? Can we actually start with the context slide? I think that's useful. So
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, just that first slide of the diagram.
Right here.
Yeah, so basically the tracks run from the center of town down to, I actually can't read what town is just to the south.
Sterling.
Sterling,
Yeah.
so down to Sterling, and these boxes depicted just are the different sheets. So where we start, and we can go to the next page, the first couple areas where we start, there's not wetlands in these areas because they're right in the middle of the kind of more urban area. But when we get down to
Manusnack Brook?
was that up at the top?
Well, it goes
Yeah, I
right
think
through
on that.
downtown.
Yeah, so
First one.
that might be what's depicted as that blue line.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
So
thinking.
the rail yard ends before it
Before
gets.
200 feet.
Yeah, well, so it's actually not 200 feet. The railroad's exempt from the riverfront area. It's actually in the letter here, we quote the section.
I'm not concerned about that, I'm just asking.
Yeah, but I figured I'd clarify, because there'll be other perennial streams that the tracks will
It's got to
cross.
cross.
And so
Right.
the restrictions are based on that 10 feet
Okay.
from the water, and the riverfront area is doesn't have any special depiction on these plans. So this here is the first wetland that is close to the tracks, and so we've loaded in the Mass DEP wetlands layer and the hydro connections layer. The blue zones are basically limited spray zones, so that's where there's buffer zone, and they only spray once a year, so we're not too worried about where these buffer zones are, and they use an approved herbicide that's allowed to be sprayed in the buffer zone. So it would be more complicated if they had different mixes for the different zones, but to keep it simple, they want to use the herbicides that are approved for the zone across the whole range of the spray area. Reducing back out. We'll go to the next page. So here you can see we don't have, we have streams that are crossing the tracks, but there isn't a no spray zone. And that's because those culvert outlets are greater than 22 feet from the center line of the track. So even though the stream crosses under the track, the herbicide isn't going to be sprayed within 10 feet of open water because that culvert is so wide. So that's what's going on in these two zones here. And what we did is we rode these tracks, and if we were any question about how far it is, we jumped out and we measured with we had one of those long tapes, and we measured to make sure things weren't within the no spray zone. Yeah, this just keeps going. More buffer zone. Yep, more buffer zone.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same situation with that stream.
And how much, you do this once a year?
The spraying happens once a year. Yep.
So remind us what you do in the areas where you can't spray that?
So they,
So where you're crossing.
yeah, so like we'll look right here, for example, this is a good example. So here, that culvert conveys the stream underneath, and that wetland, it looks like to the west of the tracks, is close.
Please, forehand.
Where are we talking about?
Where that yellow area is depicted.
That way.
Yeah,
the
right
folks
here.
Yeah,
watching on the video can.
Right there.
yep. So this is a no spray zone, and that's because both that wetland and the stream crossing are close to the tracks. And so it's kind of cool. The operator has this big control panel in the truck, and they can control pretty intricately the boom spray. So you can see here we have it depicted just no spray on that west side of the tracks. So when they're going down, when they approach that no spray zone, they'll turn off the spray on the west side to make sure that it doesn't, there's no herbicide sprayed within 10 feet of the wetland, but they'll keep the spray on the other side.
Are they doing that decision by a map and where they see they are, or by GPS?
We've actually painted all of these boundaries on the tracks
Okay,
themselves.
so that's part of the painting you said you did.
Yep, and so
Okay,
what
so
we
it's-
do to make sure that it makes sense is that we go out and, for an example where there's this spray zone, we'll paint a blue line on the side that's the buffer zone and a yellow line on the side that's the no spray zone. So regardless of which direction they're coming from, they'll see blue into yellow and they'll know they need to turn it off there.
Okay.
And then I believe also now they have someone riding with them, so at least last year when we did this, I rode with the operator the whole time, and we had these maps up with the previous version of the no spray zones on a tablet that has field maps, which is the Esri application that lets you load GIS maps and is connected to Precision GPS. So we rode along, and that meant we could prepare the operator as well. Hey, we've got,
Oh, so you are hooked into GPS when doing?
yeah, yeah, we have one that's basically accurate to within 3 feet. So it was nice because through time those markings can fade, and so by riding along we could say, hey, be prepared, there's something coming up, and then we could say, hey, turn it off if, for example, the marker was too faded or whatever. But we're hoping now with the oil paint they should last better than they had before.
Just a quick question. Obviously, the fire can do more damage to the environment than a limited amount of spray. Do you go out and paint that area so that you don't have a chance of fire there, or you just leave it completely alone?
No, they just leave it alone. I think if it gets real bad or hazardous, they'll go out with a
Okay.
crew, and do manual removal.
Okay.
I think they need to do that if trees come down and stuff
Sure.
like that, or if there's really big woody vegetation. But to be honest, that's a little bit outside the scope of what I'm familiar with, because that's more
Yeah,
in
that's fine.
the CSX kind of practice. And then you can see here on the right side of this that's one of those limited 2-year spray zones. So that's a DEP approved zone 2 area. That's what that purple hatching is. And under the regs, you can only spray in those zones every other year.
Okay.
And so the same thing goes. The operator knows what was done last year or not, and they'll alternate years of spraying in those purple zones.
So one of the things you mentioned, we've seen no change in at least the planning of that since 2020.
Yeah.
Since that, so I think that's a key part here. If there's no change in the wetland of what we're doing or any of them, then that would lead me to think that we're gonna have no impact of a change. Correct. That's a change, because it's already done.
Is the herbicide change?
To be honest, I don't know what herbicides have been applied in the past. They're in that notification letter that you got from Keith. They lay out a list of possible herbicides to be used. I think it's not always concretely decided beforehand, because there's an approved list that's compatible with these regulations. That is also, if you follow that link in that notification letter, you can get to that list as well. And so I think it has to do with who the contractor is
Availability.
and what's available.
Okay. Do you have anything else to present?
Nope.
Mr. Callahan?
That's it.
Commissioners, Commissioner Seacard, any questions for our guest?
Well, the level of herbicide, I guess, would be important to know for how long it hangs around, and how it migrates.
Yeah, and once again, I don't have those details, that's kind of outside the scope of
Yeah,
what we do,
it sounds like they've done this before.
They've done it before,
Yeah,
and
they've
that's
been-
something controlled by DEP,
yeah.
And they have a list of approved.
what they.
I'm
can
sure they've
do.
been doing it long before, so that, like you said, what was the last one, 2020 through 2024? And now
Yeah.
we're here for 2025 through.
So every 5 years,
Yeah.
this vegetation management plan needs to get approved again. And so, especially for a good place to kind of look for those answers, and there's actually a separate public process for kind of commenting on those plans. But it goes through the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture, and the notice is published in the Environmental Monitor.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit tricky because that kind of happens before this process.
Yeah.
And so it's the kind of thing you kind of have to be looking in the Environmental Monitor to kind of be able to comment on that section.
Mhm.
But the scope of this is to just approve the wetland boundaries, because that plan has already kind of been gone through the public review
Part
process.
of your plan includes following all of DEP's rules and regulations.
Yes,
And so when we approve this, it requires you to do that as the law requires.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
all that we're approving here is just that you're not doing work within that, it's the 10-foot buffer, like you said. So we're
Exactly.
just agreeing that none of the work is within 10 feet of any of these wetland resource
Yeah.
areas.
Yeah, that you agree with
Yeah.
the depictions that we've made and
Yeah.
that, the method that we've used for deciding these restriction areas.
Mhm.
And one more question if I could.
Yeah.
Does someone vet the vendors that are allowed to do this? Is there a certification program, or do you?
So there's state licensing,
Okay.
you have to be an approved applicator in order to.
Okay, good.
Just like you would for a lake.
Okay,
to,
good.
apply
Those are
pesticide.
expensive to get.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, and these companies, basically, these guys are professionals, they do this all over the country pretty much, and so they hold licenses in a
Yeah,
whole bunch of
multi-states.
different states, and at least the guy that I rode with, he was great, he was very conscientious, paying
Mhm.
attention, making sure that he was turning it off for, people's yards and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a fun day at the office,
Yeah.
riding around a train all day.
Yeah.
Commissioner Seacard,
And I think most, if I'm not mistaken, most of the track is east of where it goes through the city. Our water supplies are on, and the feeder streams are west.
Yeah, I don't think it's anywhere near that
What was the
watershed district
purple
or
section that was restricted for 2 years? Where is it?
Yeah.
So if you go down to a few pages, so
Yeah.
that's in the southern part of the town, and I think one more page is also.
We have some
Mhm.
wells down there, don't we?
Yeah, so this whole area down at the bottom is a zone 2. So that's a DEP designation that protects drinking water areas. And I don't know the details of what the criteria are that they use to designate that, but this is a layer that's available as part of the Mass GIS layers.
Well, a
where-
lot of this stuff goes into Wachusett Reservoir.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not trying to give you a hard time.
No,
'cause
no,
I
I
think the
totally understand.
homeowner can go to Home Depot and put down a lot worse than this.
Yeah, you're right, you're right about that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I've done a lot of work with the railroad too, and they do a lot of good health and safety things, and accurately, and they've done it many times before. I'm feeling more confident that this will be done right.
So did you or someone from VHB go out and field check the locations of these wetlands effectively?
Yeah, so we rode the line basically
Okay.
from Framingham to Fitchburg. And part of it was because we needed to refresh these markings, but we also wanted to make sure that they were accurate. So basically, there are actually two of
Yeah.
us, so Keith, the other consultant, also rode with us. We did this line and basically from Worcester to the New York line. And we got eyes
Okay.
on all the territory, and whenever we were someplace, we're like, hey, this looks like, like, let's say the map looked like this where there were no spray zones, but we came to something, we're like, hey, that stream actually looks like it could be closer. We'd jump out and we'd check with the tape to make sure that these restriction zones reflected the field conditions.
But you find no such changes in those?
Yeah, no significant changes. So this probably has minor changes from the previous plans, because the previous plans were all done on paper without GPS. And so we actually use that high precision GPS that we brought to
Okay.
to mark each of these spray zones so that we know they reflect the field conditions. And so there might be minor changes, but there wasn't anything significant. It's not like there's a new wetland that popped up or something.
Is that the wetlands layer as recognized by the state GIS?
Yeah, it's the one that's provided. It doesn't perfectly reflect field conditions, so like you can see actually on this page, we have a no spray zone by that wetland that's depicted,
Mhm.
the bigger wetland that's depicted
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And you can see the boundary of that wetland is farther away from our
It
spray
looks like
zone
it's
than it would
it's
need
farther
to be.
away, yeah, right.
But we in the field, we checked and we're like, hey, this wetland is actually closer. We just,
Okay.
the capacity to actually like map every wetland along,
Okay.
the 100 and
Yeah,
200 miles or whatever.
yeah,
is-
absolutely.
we couldn't get super high accurate.
Okay. Was that a change from the previous spray plan?
I
That
can't
particular-
remember,
you
I
don't
don't know,
know.
I didn't even have the
Okay.
old maps, another company produced those. But,
Okay.
but as far as we understand, there's no, because we had a layer that was digitized in and there weren't any major changes. But I can't speak exactly to what the old plan looked like.
Thanks for the insight.
Yeah.
All right, keep it.
Okay, any other questions?
No.
Any questions from the audience on this one? No questions from the audience. What do you recommend?
I would recommend, should we close
Yeah, we
first?
shows.
Okay, we can do that, that's fine. I would recommend a negative 2, so I don't think we need to condition anything. I don't really, this is,
Right.
Could somebody give
No
a
significant
motion
change.
to close the public portion of the hearing, please?
I'll make the motion. Close
Thank you,
public
Commissioner Venti.
I can second that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
alright. And for that vote, Bob,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and Rich.
Aye,
Alright, 4-0.
thank you for that.
Mhm.
So in terms of the -2 determination, just as a reminder, you want to read?
Yeah, I can read it out. Yeah, let me pull it up.
What that exactly means. We're looking
Yeah,
at these
we're-
before the meeting.
You are getting a leg up.
Kip, just on the side.
Yeah.
Do they flag anything? I mean, the only thing I would worry about is kids, kids up on the tracks, when they're spraying, they playing into it after, but it's a side note, that's all,
Yeah, there's a public notice that goes out. The regs, I'm not intimately familiar with what it exactly it is, but basically, before spraying happens, public notice goes to the people in the area, and I think maybe it's published in the paper. I'm not exactly sure what format, whether it's mailings or in the paper. And then, like I said, the operator's paying attention, but this stuff, it's basically just on the ballast, and it dries pretty quick, I think. So it's not going too far. The booms spray directly down as well.
Don't go look in the ties anyway,
Yeah.
Okay?
So, I'm recommending a -2, which means that the work described in the request is within an area subject to jurisdiction under the Act, but will not remove, fill, dredge, or alter that area. Therefore, said work does not require the filing of a notice of intent.
Sounds good to me for this. Anybody want to make a motion?
I can make that motion.
And I will second it.
-2, thank you, Commissioners.
Alright, and for that vote, Nick,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Bob,
I,
and Rich.
Aye.
Everybody
Congratulations, you have your
agrees.
-2 determination. You put a lot of work into this. We appreciate that
Yeah,
very
thank you
much.
very
thank
much,
you, Jeff.
I
appreciate
think the
it.
next time
Thank you,
through,
Mr.
you should
Cameron.
take us on a train ride.
I like that.
You would think that it would be fun, but it's a
I think
nightmare
it's
getting
boring.
track time and stuff.
Oh, I bet it is.
It's not as bad on this line, but on the main line, there were days where a 12-hour day, we were only on the track for 3 hours because you have to try and slot around the trains and,
Mhm.
they prioritize the train traffic.
They're not gonna stop.
Yeah,
No,
so
not
they
for
just-
about 30
they-
miles.
Yeah, they're like, train's coming, you gotta get off, and then you gotta wait for it to go by, and then they're like, well, and there's another one coming another way, you gotta wait for that.
Can those things jump off at any place, or you have to get off at a crossing?
No, you have to get off at a crossing, and that's one of the big challenges.
Thank you,
so.
sir.
Yeah, thank
Sorry
you.
about
Good night.
I did train tunnels
So
up
the
west.
next thing on our agenda is one of the continued hearings. I think you folks are on. So this is a notice of intent from the city of Leominster, represented by Greg Hunkmook.
Hawkmouth. He's not here.
Yeah.
Not me.
Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, it's for proposed improvements to an existing 72-inch corrugated metal pipe carries Fallbrook under DeSico Drive, which is the sole access roadway to Fallbrook Elementary School and Samoset Middle School. Scope includes work to restore land underwater by filling in a scour hole and a bank at the downstream end of the culvert at 25 DeSico Drive. This is DEP file number 199-1211. After this hearing, there'll be another one associated with the overall project that we'll consider separately related to realigning portions of the sanitary sewer. But for here, we're just on this one. So you've already been here before. Can you say who you are again for the record?
Sure. I'm Maggie Laracy with Langen Engineering. And this is, you go ahead.
Sure. And I'm Frank Holmes, also with Langen Engineering, and I was here last time,
Yep.
but I was sitting over there, and Greg Hockmith, the wetland scientist, was sitting up here at the table.
Okay, so you can speak this time now.
Yes.
They're letting you.
Yes.
Okay, get you on camera. Okay, so you gave us a good outline of it. Anything else you want to remind us or point out tonight?
No, I think last time we were just waiting on the DEP file number and to see if they had any comments. And we did receive some from Mass DEP. And we have responded since then to Mass DEP, and we brought copies today, and I sent some to Jesse. So,
Did you review those?
Yes.
Yep.
Well, I went over this with them a little bit, what was it, last week when we met?
yep.
Can you summarize it for us?
Do you
I
want me to?
think we can let the
We
experts.
didn't get a
do
chance to read this in advance.
Okay.
that.
Sure, so there are two bigger comments. They had a couple comments on each of these topics, but was they wanted to know more about if the project complied with the stream crossing standards, and if there were any calculations in relation to that. And basically, we had a meeting with DPW, confirmed that the intent of the project is a repair, not a replacement of the culvert, because it's the sole access to the schools, and because of the expense, the duration of the project, et cetera. So we explained that it is a repair.
You're not
so that-
removing it, you were
Right.
putting in a
Exactly,
sleeve, basically.
exactly.
right?
But relining doesn't meet the stormwater crossing standards, so they're pushing for applicants to do that, but it's not always feasible to do that.
And sorry, just
Go
to
ahead.
add to that, like the existing culvert doesn't meet the stream crossing standards. And so by putting the liner in, just to repair, the issues related to it and to avoid, could be a failure of the culvert and then a failure of the roadway. The intent is not to replace it. And if we were to replace it, it would be designed to meet the stream crossing standards. But just lining it, it doesn't change the fact that it just doesn't meet the stream crossing standards in the existing condition. Right.
Culvert is
Do you
failing
have a-
now, though, right?
Yeah, the bottom is all corroded and
Is
eaten
is
away.
it strictly the diameter, the shrinking of the diameter that causes it to be non-compliance, or is it, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the stream crossing standards have an openness ratio. It's like the length to the
Oh,
what
to the
there's-
open.
Yeah.
There's a calculation.
Yes, and it doesn't meet it now. And yes, the lining will shrink that a little bit, so it still won't be in compliance.
It's also supposed to be 1
1.5 times like bank.
The
full
big,
width,
yeah, so
right?
it's not quite wide enough.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's also supposed to be open bottom as well, and this is a,
Yeah.
corrugated
Oh.
metal pipe, and it's not open on the bottom. It's supposed to be
Mhm.
open with a natural stream bed channel, right? So it's not possible to comply with the stream crossing standards without completely replacing it.
Right.
Metal pipe might open up a little bit soon.
Might
Might
be
not be
rich.
what they're looking for though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other comment that we provided some backup for was how was the riprap apron sized? And we did provide,
Where is that in here?
so that's an attachment. It's on one of those. It was several pages. I didn't provide all the attachments, but it's online. But we did a watershed analysis using the Federal Highway Hydraulic Design of Energy Dissipators for Culverts and Crossings. That's what engineers, we call HEC 14, so shorten it a little bit. But it gives some parameters for the sizing of the riprap apron, like length, the width, which is where we got that approximate 40 by 40 area, and then the size of the stones. So we provided that information as well. And the rest were really minor. There was some clarifications on the WPA3 form. They asked us to provide a checklist and explain why most of the standards weren't applicable. And we confirmed.
For stormwater.
Stormwater
The
standards.
stormwater standard checklist,
Yep.
right? So we provided that in
Yep.
the response as well.
And then they just wanted confirmation that the 401 water quality certification in NEPA is not applicable, and confirming the no-take letter was obtained from Natural Heritage.
I see they're suggesting that this commission may consider requesting alternatives like directional drilling.
That's
Do
for
you
the
have a
sewer
comment on
project.
that?
Oh, shoot, did I just send along
Yeah.
the wrong ones? I'm sorry.
I wasn't quite following.
Yeah, okay, no wonder where you were
I apologize.
like, where is
We've got
this?
one comment
So I'm looking
letter
for
both.
what you got,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't find any of those, and why are these suggestions? Okay.
So sorry, hold on to that one for the next hearing.
Yes, sir.
My apology.
Yeah, the commission looked at these
Yeah, I
tomorrow
got it.
too.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's it.
This would be great to get in advance so that we all get a chance to read it, so,
Yeah.
for future reference.
Yeah, we apologize for that. We did get it together. We got the comments, I don't know, 10 days ago, and got it together as quickly as we possibly could, but that wasn't until last night.
It's a little tricky sometimes when you get you're waiting for DEP for 3 weeks and you have a week to figure it all out. I definitely understand.
And respond.
Yeah.
They mentioned slip lining is strongly discouraged. That is the best option here.
We think so, and the city thinks so, again, based on, budget costs. The city has limited funds for addressing the issues with the culvert, and, slip lining it is definitely significantly less expensive. But also, and all equally as important is, they just don't want to, it would be very difficult to be installing a new culvert across Chico Drive, because it's the sole access to
You'd have to close the road
to the
to do it.
schools, and one of the schools is an emergency shelter, right? So
Yep.
they are very hesitant to go down that road.
Yeah, I think so. If there was a fire in one of the schools, anything like that. They would get to it.
If you want a decision tonight, we have to look at this. You realize
Understood.
that, right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So be patient, everybody out there. See, they recommend, low flow conditions, well, of course you would, any engineer would do it in low flow. Okay.
MDW?
That's land underwater.
Okay. Looks like your colleague covered that pretty well. And that one, we'll get to the other one.
He had some help from us,
Did
a
he?
little bit.
Greg?
Yeah.
Little bit.
He took most of those acronyms, the land underwater and such.
So it seems to me that you answered all of their questions reasonably so. And that there are no remaining concerns, at least in your professional opinions.
Correct.
Okay. Let's wait for the other guys.
Can I ask a question about the slip line?
Sure.
Um,
Is that from the sewer one or from this one?
For the culvert, the slip lining of the culvert,
Okay, which page are you on?
just the second one, slip lining is strong and discouraged in the creeps, stream
Oh, there it is
crossing
again.
sound.
Okay, it's the
So it
same.
reduces the openings ratio. How much would the slip lining reduce the cross-sectional area and the openings ratio of the
I
culvert?
think it's negligible. It's,
Yeah.
it's, you know, when it's complete, the thickness of the liner is, it's like a PVC pipe. It's about equivalent.
And this is a 5-foot culvert, I mean.
Yeah, 6 foot,
I mean,
yeah.
right, 6-foot culvert.
So it might be, you know,
Negligible. right?
total a half an inch total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would seem negligible.
It's less.
It is less, you know, but
It's less, it's certainly
So
not
it's
more.
5 feet 11 versus 6 feet,
Yes.
yeah.
It's a good illustration of what difference 1 inch can make.
Well,
Well-
you get the rebound or you don't, you know?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
if it's a 6-inch pipe, that's a
No,
big, that's a big change in the ratio, but if it's a
Mhm.
6-foot pipe, that's not.
Yeah, right.
No, I agree with you.
so the stream, and I might have, don't quote these numbers exactly, but the openness ratio or the area of the opening divided by the length. You know, the standard is, I think it's like 0.73 is something like that, the minimum that they would like under the stream crossing standards. That existing culvert, it's about 0.2, right? So it is, you know, significantly less, but putting this liner in there, you know, so maybe it makes it, you know, 0.199 instead of 0.2, you know, it really just comes down to, you know, the culvert exists, it's been there a long time, it just doesn't meet the stream crossing standards.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
stuck
you have
with,
to
a-
redo the entire
we're
thing.
stuck with an old design.
Right.
I don't really know what, because I've been out there, and I, by no means am I a fish and wildlife expert, but I find it hard to imagine any fish or wildlife that are gonna have trouble getting through that if it's made a little bit.
Hippos are almost extinct up here.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Do we have any other
Just
questions?
with
I
that
was
being
thinking the same
mentioned in
thing.
this, yeah.
Any other commissioner questions?
I'm curious of the life, Frank, of this, it's a Band-Aid, basically.
Yeah, but it is rated for a life of 50 years is what
50
it's
years.
designed for, yes. Similar to a new pipe, actually, because that is almost what it's like, is a new PVC pipe, and it does still have the structure of the hose pipe around it as
Yeah.
well.
So probably stronger
Yeah.
with those, but,
Stronger than what's there now.
yeah.
Mhm.
That's why it's going in.
Yeah. Something does need to happen there sooner rather than later, too,
I just,
in my opinion.
I think it's gonna be amazing if it works, but
Why?
well, because the west side of the culvert is damaged pretty good. The ceiling's starting to fall in, and the metal isn't a nice, smooth, okay, we'll throw this right in there. If you throw it in there, it looks like you're gonna scrape that piece that you're gonna be putting in there. I don't know, and it curves, it's not a straight shot either. You know, you've got to bend it.
It is a bend, yeah.
I goes, oh, they must know what they're doing, but just a couple worries I have, and maybe for naught, but, and I hope it works. I'm sure it's proven technology, and we get 50 years out of it, but I hope we can come up with something a little better. We couldn't get anything by FEMA at that time, huh, with Nick here helping out. We probably didn't even know
You just
it was
can't
this
close the
bad.
road, I mean, you got two schools down there, you can't,
Yeah,
I mean, you gotta, in order to replace it, you've gotta excavate everything.
and we need to focus on what the interest that we're protecting as part of the
Yeah.
Wetlands Protection Act.
Yeah, and, I see that.
So it includes flood control and storm damage protection, which this helps provide by maintaining the facility, the infrastructure that's there. What, you had another concern?
Well, it's just the normal concern, we're doing a Band-Aid again. You know, 50 years isn't bad, though, I mean, maybe things will change in that period of time too. You can do a bridge around, you know, you could do it somehow at some later point,
If
obviously.
it becomes a problem.
I think relining pipes is more than a Band-Aid. I think it's a serious operation that clears out all your arteries and makes them stronger or something like that.
Oh,
As an analogy,
that's a good analogy.
having worked on it in water systems before. So it's not a full replacement, but is a very economical and effective method for accomplishing, boy, we got really good. We got, much closer.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your work, because the importance of this is obvious, and we need to get it done, I understand all of that. And I hope it works, I may be out there and see it and everything, but I appreciate your help with it, thank you.
Yes, to your concern about lining it, they do go in and prepare a
Okay.
pipe beforehand, so there's some rusted out areas on the bottom where there's materials washed away, they're gonna fill that in with crushed stone, so that when they put the liner in, it's being supported by something, and if there are any like sharp edges, they'll grind those down, or, they prepare the pipe before
Yeah, it's gotta
putting
be
in, they
proper.
clean it, and they can deal with the bend in the pipe as well.
The grading I was seeing was from the top.
Yeah, the head wall there is not in very good shape.
We lost a lot of soil up there, it looked like it was gonna cave in, so,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay, there's no one here in the audience to ask questions, so I'd like a motion to close the public hearing portion
I can make that.
of this hearing.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
And how do you vote, Bob?
I vote, good, we have to do it.
No, you're voting
No,
to
just
close
to
the
close
public
the,
hearing.
close the hearing.
Oh,
We're not voting on the motion yet.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
just a roll
Just
call.
to close the public hearing since there's no one out here.
I'll give it an
Yeah.
eye.
And
Thank
I,
you.
and Mike,
Aye.
Nick, and Rich.
Aye.
Okay.
So now, what do you recommend, Sir Agent?
Well, I think that they did a very good job addressing all of DEP's comments, and like we've kind of been saying, I think that, given the budget that the city wanted to allocate towards this, the fact that it's, close to failing right now, I think that this is a good project to get taken care of. So if it were me, I would issue an order of conditions with, our standard conditions, plus the revised special ones that we came up with in November. And then I guess additionally, I know that they're already planning on it, but we can condition it to a period of low flow. which I
You
think
don't need
everyone's
to if it's
planned.
already part of the plan.
Yep.
That is part of your plan,
Correct.
correct?
Yeah.
Yes, so it's just,
Yeah,
because everything is part of the plan becomes
Yeah, that gets
part
entered
of our
for-
conditions.
yeah.
And that'll give you
Besides,
enough
it's only a
time.
headache for them if they don't. Doesn't
Yeah, so low
Yeah.
flow
We'll
is
just pump it
typically
around after a rain.
August,
Yeah,
August, September timeframe,
So that'll
right?
give
So
you
I
enough
think
time.
that is the plan.
yeah.
Okay, so
Okay, deal.
that's what I'd be looking for, is a motion to approve this order of conditions with our standard special conditions added in.
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Siki.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right, and Bob, how do you vote on that?
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and Rich.
Aye.
All right. Getting a little quicker with those, starting again.
Okay, so that's approved 4-0. Congratulations.
Nice
Let's
job,
move
guys.
on to the next part that you're here for. So this is in our agenda, it's D2. Notice of intent, the city of Leominster, represented again by Epsilon Associates, for the proposed improvements to realign portions of the sanitary sewer on the property at 25 DeSico Drive. DEP file number 199-1210. And you have given us DEP's comments. Do you have other things to add in terms of, since you were last year presenting on this?
I don't think so. The comments for this portion of the work were less got less comments, so, and a lot of them were like the standard, did get a no-take letter from Natural Heritage.
Okay, excuse me, what's your estimate, the habitat part for the endangered species, and you're covered with, this letter?
Mhm.
Sorry.
Yep.
From the relevant agency there, division,
Correct.
okay?
They wanted to confirm that the FEMA line was correct, based on the elevations on the firm map, which we converted the datum and put that on our survey. So they are correct.
And that's answered here.
Mm-hmm.
And their next part was considering alternatives, directional drilling, et cetera, to avoid and minimize wetland impacts.
Correct. And
Um,
we chose this design because we thought it would be the least invasive to the resource areas. But directional drilling, is my understanding, is that would be more invasive.
Install what we're doing, the work in the resource areas is essentially installing sewer pipe down to a manhole and just connecting the pipe to the manhole. If we were to directionally drill at that manhole location, we'd have to excavate a very large receiving pit for the directional drilling equipment. And so, that would be more disruptive than what, otherwise installing a pipe would be a relatively narrow trench, through the wetlands, so.
And a pit for the material that comes out of the directional drilling and all of that, yeah.
Right.
The manhole's not very far off either.
It's not.
It's only, what do you think, like 30 feet from the stream?
Maybe
a little more?
Yeah, I think it's maybe a little bit more,
Yeah.
like, I don't recall exactly.
Yeah, that's
From-
fair.
In the wetlands.
Oh, within
Like-
the wetlands, yeah.
Yeah.
It might be
Maybe.
only 30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely not, it's far, I agree with your point.
Yeah.
I
From the
think-
road, I know it's like 100
Yeah.
change because they needed to get the hose down to the truck, but.
Mhm.
I have no intention of asking for alternatives like directional drilling, at least not myself. The other ones here have to do with, one is that it's exempt from the stormwater standards, and you gave a checklist and explained why it is. But they also mentioned the commission might want to consider including conditions that require monitoring period steps to ensure that any temporarily impacted areas are mitigated. We do that at times. Is that needed here? What exactly is you're gonna dig it up and things are gonna grow back in that narrow line, right? What can you add to this?
We actually did,
To convince us
though.
to include or to not include this?
So we did, as part of our original filing, we included wetland monitoring during construction and post-monitoring.
And so you're gonna have a professional wetland scientist there
Correct.
during,
So what they were asking for, had already provided in the original filing.
well, they were asking for a, do you remember?
Two complete growing seasons.
I think that was in your
They mentioned that in
replication
reply,
plan as
though.
well, wasn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's pretty.
As I understood this comment, and we talked about that when we met last week, but I think that everything from that one was already addressed from your first application.
Yeah, and that's pretty standard when work is
Yeah,
ongoing in the
two
wetland.
yeah.
So tell us what you're
Absolutely.
proposing in that aspect, just make it clear for us. Are you
Sure.
proposing a two growing season monitoring plan?
Yes, so they would come out, I think, seasonally and check on the status of the plants, and if
Yeah.
they report to you,
Are these plants that they're gonna put in
Yes.
after you're done? As
yes.
part of your plan?
As
So
part of our
this was
story.
already in there?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not something we need to consider in addition?
Correct.
No.
I
it's
wonder
already-
why they put it in here.
Seems they may have missed
You
the
don't know.
fact that it was in there.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where I'm getting a little confused. What
Kind of
is
like the
it?
no-take letter.
Already there.
Yeah, it's this with Oxbow.
Right, we also would include, that's a
Yeah.
good point, we'd included a no-take letter in the original filing, but they commented that, we should be sure to get one. So I think they maybe
You got one.
missed a
Thorough.
couple of things.
They might have some boilerplate.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that, so I'm glad.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nick. What questions do you have?
I was gonna ask what exactly Mass DEP meant by saying that the commission should refrain from issuing an order of conditions till such time as they receive a written determination from Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program. regarding work with a map estimated habitat, so that it, or any findings or conditions contained therein may be incorporated into any order of conditions issued for the project. So that's to say, do we need to explicitly include that in the order of conditions?
No,
That
no, because
Yeah.
it's part of their plan already.
It's, okay,
To notate, leave the turtles alone.
okay,
And they've already
Yeah,
gone
that's
through
already in the
proper
plan.
authorities, and they seem well.
okay, great.
That's my answer.
So that's,
Want to disagree,
Yeah.
help yourself.
that's why I was confused by that.
Yeah, that's good, yeah, it is, when you
Because-
see it on here, you're like, wait a second, but I think
Like-
we already got that.
Didn't we already go through this?
Yeah.
Yeah, just like the other one we just covered.
Yeah. Yeah. no,
Or
that's fair.
deja vu.
Okay.
Other questions?
Well, yeah. The big holdup all along was the turtles on our end. Well, we got this a long time ago.
They could be turtles, they could not be turtles.
Right.
Okay, well, who's watching the turtle? I mean, as far as I know.
The animals.
Yeah.
What I could read up on them is they come out in June, you know, and this is, well, this won't, well, the pipe's gonna be done at a dry period. Is this gonna be the same time frame?
So through the natural heritage permitting, the new no-take letter, they required us to submit a turtle protection plan, which Oxbow Associates prepared, and that goes through, depending on the season, what is required for the monitoring and watching out for the turtles. So, for example, in like November, December, they're more dormant, they're hibernating. It's worse to do, not worse, it's not ideal to do the culvert project then because they could be sleeping in the stream. But in the summer months, they move around more. So part of the sewer project is we have to put up silt fence where we'll be trenching for the sewer pipe. And Oxbow will come out and inspect the area, make sure there's no turtles, and there's an entire plan for when, if a contractor sees one, they call Oxbow, they come out and tag it, report back to the state, move it, and they'll do contractor
process.
training. Yeah,
So this is kind of like a get out of jail free card for us. If they're gonna be taking responsibility for watching over that part of it.
Oxbow has, yeah. If it makes you feel better, I spoke to Scott Smyers, who, is he the president of Oxbow, I believe? Yeah, and he, you know, like we talked about at the initial meeting, you can't really get into the specifics when you're dealing with endangered species like this, but he basically assured me,
Yeah.
and, you know, I guess you guys as the commission here in the city, that they've been contracted and they're gonna be keeping a close eye and making sure that, you know, everything goes as it should.
Understand, that was my only concern is, when you do the project, and we say, the old,
Yeah.
old, shit, what we do, but we'll have eyes on it, so I'm not.
Seems
Yeah,
covered.
yeah.
More to
They know what they're doing.
more to that-
Oxbow's very good.
More to that point, Bob, if you look at the 8 interests in the Wetland Protection Act, number 8 is protection of wildlife habitat, not protection of wildlife. So, protection of wildlife itself is actually beyond the purview of the the Wetland Protection Act and our work here on the Conservation Commission. So actually, just that they have a letter, that we don't have to see the plan, we just have to
Understand.
know that it's going on. So
So it's how you affect the habitat,
Yeah.
right, what he's suggesting.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
But we love animals.
Good to go. Okay, there's no one here in the audience, so given that, to ask questions, I take no questions from Giannis or Phil Nyberg. Would somebody please make a motion to close the public part of the hearing?
I'll make that
Public
motion.
open.
I'll
Thank you.
make the motion to close the public portion of this
And
hearing.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right, and Mike, how do you vote?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
And Rich?
Aye.
Okay.
What do you recommend, Agent Jesse?
Agent Jesse, that's me. I recommend a standard order of conditions with our revised November special conditions. And I think that they've addressed everything else, you know, from their replication plan to having it during low flow, so I don't think we need any conditions other than that.
I would agree. Would Commissioner like to make a motion to move this forward?
I can make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Seacard. A second?
I'll second.
Good.
I'll second.
Second
I beat him.
All right, it's
Commissioner
Mike,
Siki.
it's in the record.
Thanks.
Yep.
And on that vote, Nick,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
and Rich.
Aye, congratulations, that is also approved.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Nice
We'll
job.
have those in, I
Thanks for your
don't know,
patience,
2
guys.
weeks.
Sure.
maybe, or
Yeah, it'll be
something.
2 weeks. We'll get them signed at the next meeting, and then I'll get those mailed out, and I'll email you guys copies as well.
If you're in a big rush before then, let him know.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
All
true.
right, terrific.
Thank you
very much.
Yeah, thank you
Thank you.
guys, we
And
appreciate
we'll
your
see you
time.
back in the near future, please.
Okay.
Oh, can't wait. That'll be a fun one.
By the way, which one is gonna go first, the sewer or the
Probably the sewer.
The sewer first?
Yeah, because they want to do the sewer over the summer when the school
Okay,
is,
kind of
when school is out.
Okay.
But the culvert is gonna maybe wait until like into the low flow.
Okay, thank you.
So, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
The next item in our agenda was a notice of intent that was a continued hearing that is not gonna be addressed tonight. So we're not gonna open it, so we don't need to continue it, okay?
Yep.
And that was for the work at the former Pizzeria Uno at 905 Marion Avenue.
Is there something we should know? There any?
Quick synopsis, so Doug received his comments from DEP, I believe,
Who-
late last
Who
week.
again?
It's Douglas Dillon of Goddard Consulting, who's representing this project. And he's still working with the engineers to address those comments from DEP, so
Okay.
we'll get into that on May 13th, the next meeting.
Yep. And actually, it's gonna come up again in just a moment. So under our regular meeting items, we have nothing under enforcement. The next are to approve the meeting minutes from April 8th. So I've looked at those minutes. I'd like to commend you on doing a very nice job on those.
Thank you.
Much more what we're looking for.
Needed a few examples, you
I've
know?
seen in the past.
Yeah, yeah.
I couldn't edit it because we didn't have permission.
I
to
did, yeah,
edit it.
that's I keep forgetting to change the permissions when I make
So I
them.
have one request. Can you please
Yeah.
pull it up?
Yeah, definitely.
And it's actually a point I'd like to make as it is.
Yeah, of course.
Mentioned in here, this was related to the Pizzeria Uno and the water going from the parking lot into the wetland resource area. And it mentions in there the commissioners were concerned about that. Well, I wasn't, because I think the wetland's a great place to treat the stormwater. So I think saying a commissioner questioned would be perhaps better wording.
Okay.
So my recommendation is
Maybe
don't.
right here,
don't-
Commissioner questions.
Yeah,
Express
instead of
concern.
express concern,
I
I'd
don't
say
know why
a
I won't
commissioner,
let me-
because it wasn't all of us.
Sure.
A commissioner questioned that the stormwater, et cetera. That'd be
Okay.
my one request change.
Yeah,
And, yeah, so try to avoid making
No, it
things
does.
that are plural and giving an
Sure.
opinion to it when we're inquiring.
yes.
So it's more of an inquiry, might become concern depending on the answer.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think I did that. I think it was just a concern. I just.
Oh, and you might be concerned.
Informational.
And that's
Okay.
okay, but I didn't want a plural.
You didn't want to be looped in with that.
Understand.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if someone were to read that, they could say, you know, why? if
The whole commission.
The commission was concerned about this, why wasn't
Exactly
something
what I'm
else?
after.
Fair.
Why wasn't
Thank
there a
you, sir.
follow-up?
No, it's a good point, I'm glad you caught that.
Any other requested edits for this one? Can we have a motion to approve the minutes from April 8th, 2025 with this one edit, please?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Siki. Is there a second?
I can second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Seacard. We are ready for a vote.
All right, Bob,
Aye.
Nick,
I'm reading them just now, they
Okay,
look
that's
okay.
Mike,
Aye.
and Rich.
Aye. So that passes 4-0. Under Commissioner comments, I got two things to bring up. One, Jesse was at the Earth Fest festival here recently. That was
Yes.
last Tuesday, was it?
Yes, it was a week ago
Give
today.
us a brief summary of what it was like. I know there were
Yeah.
more vendors than
Sure.
we did in the past.
There were, yeah, it was a good
So you
turnout.
may have gotten more customers, so
Yeah.
to speak, or visitors. How'd it
So
go?
it was a collection of mostly vendors, and then there were some people from the Department of Conservation and Recreation at a table. I had a table that Rich joined me at for a bit. Kind of just concerning all things environmental. You know, most of the vendors were, you know, there were people from, what do you call them? Like secondhand stores, you know, like reuse,
Yep.
stop waste, recycling, stuff like that. People that
Composting.
Yeah, composting, environmental landscaping, like all sort of, sustainable practices. And it was nice, yeah, a lot of people came, a lot of people were interested to hear what we do here. Because like we talk about, and something that I'm actually gonna be working on with Johannes, is getting the word out about just the Wetlands Protection Act and,
Thank you.
yeah, but, that was very good evidence that it's important to try and get the word out on that and explain to more homeowners what exactly buffer zones are and when they would have to go and get these kinds of permits that we're talking about tonight. So there's a good little mini version of that. Hopefully we'll have some television programming coming soon, at least on public access, but yeah, it was fun.
Well, that'll segue into the next thing, something we brought up in the past with the previous agent. But we really need a campaign, a publicity campaign.
Yeah, I couldn't agree
Through
more.
the city to do this. We've talked about postcards or even
Mhm.
bill inserts,
Yeah,
that maybe could go out with water and sewer bills.
yeah.
Um,
I did, I don't know if you would have.
Explain what people need to do if you live near it, because most folks don't know, and as you know, we always get a lot of folks coming in and say, well, we didn't know, and say, well,
Yeah.
I can understand that.
Absolutely, yeah,
So we need to do that better, and I hope you'll
yeah,
come to us in the future with a plan as to how to do that, in addition to
yeah,
some
yeah,
notes
absolutely.
on this.
No, that's definitely something that I'm looking to address, still kind of
Okay.
brainstorming, I guess, but I'll be happy to come to you guys soon with an actual, plan of A,
That'd be
B, and
great.
C and what we're gonna do.
Brainstorm away.
Yeah.
Speaking, that was mentioned on Leominster TV when you had an interview with the Mayor Dean, right?
Yes,
Tell
yeah.
us about that briefly.
It was nice, got to
When
interview
was
with,
it?
what was that?
When was it? When were you
That
on TV?
was, oh man, I don't know, it was a Thursday,
February?
maybe 3 or, I think it
2
was.
weeks ago?
Yeah, it might have been about 3 weeks ago. Maybe it was April 3rd.
Oh.
I think that sounds right. Yeah, it was nice. I haven't really had a ton of one-on-one interaction with them, so it was kind of just getting to know the mayor a little bit, learning a little bit more about the city. Did get to do, at least briefly explain, what it is we do here. And me and him both kind of got the message out that, the last thing that we're out to do is get people in trouble or, go gotcha. We just want to help people when they're trying to do projects that are under our jurisdiction, figure out a way to get them done and stay in compliance. And I think that's like the most important
That is
part
the
of
most
it.
important thing.
Yeah,
Good job.
Okay, great, thank you.
sure.
I'm glad you had the chance to do that. That was kind of funny. You were over at my house getting some.
I know, I was with you before.
And I'm
yeah.
watching them on live on TV within an hour.
Yeah, that was funny.
The last thing I wanted to bring up is the Great Massachusetts Cleanup, which we've done two litter pickup days last 2 years. We've done a day for each. And this goes on in Leominster from April 22nd to May 22nd. Would this commission like to do another litter pickup day this year?
Sure.
I would.
Yeah, I'd be interested.
So that means we would need, I would suggest we try to pick a date tonight. This is the start of it. And get
Mhm.
something planned, and we do need to come up with a location. So, that means you get to look at your calendars.
Yes,
I don't have to, I'm retired, so,
that's nice.
everybody else that has,
Yeah.
have more urgent schedules than I do.
I like throwing that out too, Mike, but it doesn't always end up like that, though.
That's how you get in trouble doing that once in a while.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I
My
can,
Saturdays
I'll
are
defer to
open.
you guys.
what do you think of a Saturday?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Didn't you have a place last year, Nick, too? When I had to.
I suggested actually
Basket
the,
was what?
one of the places I suggested was actually Fallbrook, where it crosses under the Cheaper Drive there, because I went to see that sort of.
Oh, that's right, yes, yes.
I went to see that culvert and I was sort of horrified that
Oh, really?
there was so much trash in this site.
It didn't seem that bad then, no.
I walked
When-
along
when
Elm
you-
Street
when you went down
recently,
there.
and it was pretty bad.
Elm
Of course,
Street.
the nip bottles,
Yeah.
between two of the hiking.
What was it,
Entrance
the cinnamon
points.
flavored one there?
Oh, the Fireball.
Fireball.
Yeah, it's Fireball
They're
everywhere.
loaded with Fireball.
Yeah.
Jesse knows all about those.
Well, you go to the liquor store, they keep them in the fridge now. And it's like.
find yours, or?
Yeah. That was it. Those are all from me, actually.
It's so I think
About May
Yeah.
10th or May 17th?
that's fine with me.
I can do either or. How about, does May 10th work for everybody?
I think that's okay.
Winooski Brook is always good through town, or, you know,
Yeah.
even Market
Yeah.
Basket
We can certainly,
donated,
I think as long as we have a date tonight, we can brainstorm ideas, and I can also go out and look beforehand and say, hey, maybe this area is a little worse than
With
that
that in
one.
mind, let's pick May 17th to give us one more week.
Okay.
Because May comes quick.
That's fine.
Give us one more week to pick when it is.
Yeah, May
I'll
17th.
plan on Saturday, May 17th.
How about the rail trail? I mean, I don't see anybody picking up along there, and, you know, we'd like to get more traffic on that, so,
Yeah.
Well, let's check it out. What we need to
Yeah.
consider is, let's say if we get a group of people, can we keep them all busy? Do we need to space them out on, like
Yeah,
we're
maybe
doing
we'll
Elm
split
Street? We
them out.
don't all start in the same spot.
Yeah.
yeah.
You'd have to drop people off and
Mhm.
coordinate
Elm
that.
Street is tough because people drive fast up there.
I'm not suggesting it for that reason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a tough place for pedestrians to be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's more of a solo where a couple people pick up, because you're just going in one line anyways.
Yeah,
The behind Market Basket worked well.
yeah.
Would that need it again this year already, or would we wait a year?
It does.
So checking
I would,
behind
I would
there.
be, I would think that it probably does.
Mine is it every
It would
year.
be my
And if
guess.
so, it might be our annual place. We got a good group
Yeah.
there last year.
Yeah.
I went by there today and there was a girl sleeping on a rock.
Okay.
And
So, do you want to go and check some out for us?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if anybody
Yeah.
else, contact directly with
Yeah,
him, and we're good to go with Jesse.
yeah, sure.
And did any other commissioners want to bring something up?
I wanted to speak to a couple of those points, Rich. I attended a training on enforcement. It turns out that
This is MACC training?
an MACC training on enforcement of the Wetlands Protection Act. It turns out that any person that violates the Wetlands Protection Act can receive a violation notice or an enforcement order. So
Mhm.
that would include contractors as well. So to the point that I know there's been some frustration that the same contractors seem to be violating the Wetlands Protection Act, and
We're the same owners.
we're enforcing,
yeah.
we're issuing violation notices and enforcement orders against property owners rather than contractors. We can also,
We can do both, you're suggesting.
we can
Thank
use the
you for
Wetlands
bringing
Protection
that
Act
to
to,
us.
you know,
It does say any persons, yes. it
any
does.
person, yeah, so contractors are viable parties.
You
Anything
know,
else you want to add?
we can't recommend any contractors, but I do believe that we could put on an informal meeting for contractors to attend to explain our special condition, explain the Wetlands Protection Act, and perhaps on our website, publish a list of contractors that have come through that process. Don't recommend anybody, but at least it's a step in the right direction, because the contractors should know, just, I've said this before, when a licensed electrician comes down for a permit, he or she is coming down for the homeowner. The homeowner is ultimately liable, but the contractor is required to know the code and know how to apply the code and do the work properly.
And the tree cutting company should know
The
this.
tree companies should know, the
Landscapers.
site development companies should know that, anybody that owns an excavator should know that. They know dig safe, they should know the
Well, and this fits within the public.
education.
Education
Mhm.
campaign we're talking about.
Mhm.
Please bring that up again when Commissioner Chuck's
Yeah.
back. Bob?
I was doing public education today, investigation with the board, building department in the city hall here. I stopped by and say hi to Jesse too, but the chicken coops, you're gonna get people that are gonna do it no matter what, you know, but I'm looking at it from the outside like, hey, I wanna put one up. Well, how do I do it? And what's the, process of getting permission, knowing the rules? Do I need a permit? How many do I get? I mean, people don't have any of that. And it's really not that easy.
To find, no, it's in the zoning, it's in zoning and
Yeah.
other places.
But so you know, you can go to the Leominster GIS map, and you can click on, or put in your address. You know, if you see a chicken coop, you can put on an address in there, and click on layers, and at the bottom, it has additional data, and then you can click on zoning. And it gives you initials for, you know, that part of where the house is, whether you can, it's okayed. And there's only 2 zones that are okay to do it, and 4 zones that you need a special permit, and 5 zones that say no. So I never knew all of this stuff either, you know, and there are also, it doesn't spell it out very good, but some places too, you don't, it doesn't spell out how many feet away from a wetlands or a river you are, you know, and boundaries, how far away from your neighbor can you do it, you know?
Right.
Massachusetts does spell it out, but I don't know if it's in our zoning law either, but. And then the other thing too is language barriers. There's nobody, you know, if they don't know English or they don't understand computers or don't have one, they don't have any of these tools to go, you know.
So where are you trying to go with this, Bob?
Well, I'm trying to stick it in with the,
With the publicity?
yeah.
Okay.
You know, I do think that it's such a popular topic now. Everybody's trying to grow their own food, everybody's getting more, into more sustainable activities and lifestyles, that it's a very popular thing. We've got Tractor Supply down there that is, you know, get chicken days. It wouldn't be a bad idea to post something down there that they can use as a handout. Or put something on our website to just say.
Have a little flyer.
Yeah, a little flyer, and, you know, of course, they want to encourage people to buy chickens, they don't want to put barriers up there, so that's always going to be a problem, but a little something on the website, because it is pretty popular now, I mean, it really is.
So that would be a good thing to put there. And a lot of it's out of our jurisdiction, but if they're near a creek or
Yeah.
wetland, then it's in our
Mhm. Right.
jurisdiction for the
I guess
chicken.
what I was getting at, Rich, was just to be more proactive, like you say, to get the public to know about
We
it.
do need that.
You know, because
Exactly.
unfortunately, we get the butt end of it, you know.
And that can be one part of it is the chicken coops,
Which
because
is
they cross our paths.
I mean, you know, just
Yeah.
as an example, if you were to Google, or if you were to do a search on the Leominster website about chicken coops, nothing comes up.
No? Okay.
That, something should come up, just
Yes.
to say you've got, you know.
That's something that you can add to your list to.
That's what I did.
That's something I will add to someone else's list.
Yeah, somebody else doing the.
I can put a bug in the air on
Yeah.
that.
But we look to you.
I understand, yeah.
Anybody
Okay.
can do it, Jesse. Sure.
I
Anybody?
like that.
Okay, thank you.
I
We're gonna
appreciate
move on from Commissioners' comments. Our next part is a request for a certificate of compliance at 69 Biscuit Hill Drive, DEP file number 199-192. I
Yes.
believe this is a case from 1995-ish.
Yeah, I think it's actually, I think it was 89 when it initially was applied for, and then there was an extension from 1992. Another, similar to the one that we approved at the last meeting, or maybe it was a couple ago.
What do you
Very old.
recommend here? You've looked into it?
Yeah, I went out there today. It was kind of the same as that one over on Day Street where there's no glaring issues. This lot has also been subdivided since this order of conditions was issued.
Oh,
So it's just that even the parcels are totally different than they were at the time that that was issued. So I mean, the way that I look at these is it's currently, there's no issues out there, everything's functional, so I would recommend giving them, the certificate of compliance just so that they can get their deed cleared up and nice
Yep.
little reset.
Yes, this is from long ago.
Yeah.
Any questions?
No, I just haven't seen it, so
Yeah,
I trust you.
I think that's fair.
Okay, anybody want to give a motion to approve this certificate of compliance for this case from back in 1995?
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Nick.
I'll point out too, with, one of the good ideas that Chuck and Rich had when I first met with them is maintaining that active project list. And with that, I'll actually keep an eye on who's getting their COCs, so at least with,
Yes.
more recent projects, then you know, maybe it'll still be me, who knows, but whoever the agent is in 20 or 30 years will not, you know,
Well,
be
then
stuck
this
with one
one's
of these
closed.
every single agenda.
Excellent.
Yeah,
You should
that's my
you'll
thoughts.
update that after every meeting, I hope.
That's a good idea, yeah, I do,
Yeah.
I need to be a little more on top of that. So I'll look
As
at
well
that
as
project
when you
list
do the
more.
minutes the next morning, I recommend.
Yeah,
Our next item is a request for an extension permit for an order of conditions for Lake Samoset, DEP file number 199-1009. I have a first question.
yes.
Are you recusing yourself, Commissioner?
If
Did you in the past on
the
this?
commission would like me to, I would be happy to, but then you can't vote.
That is
I-
correct.
I don't think there's any reason for me to recuse myself.
I don't remember if you have for other Lake Samoset things, but that's when you were doing your own personal.
Correct.
Mhm.
So it would be up to you.
But you own property
I
on the
do
lake.
own property there.
I'd recommend we wait
if
till
we're going
next
to.
time.
Yeah, we can wait,
If they
they're
don't
not
mind,
set
let's
to
wait.
expire until June, I believe. And also, I'll give a brief explanation of why there's two. And I'm currently working with the board from Lake Samoset to try and get this all straightened out, but, so 0818 is very old, I think that's 2004. And they've been renewing it, even though this 1009 basically entails the same work. It's just the aquatic management that the company that they hire does, basically just treating the lake with chemicals every year in order to try and keep the weeds back in the milfoil that's out there. So I'm trying to get everything, I'm in talks with DEP right now, just trying to gather every single thing that everyone has and try to figure out if we can get one of these closed out, and then it'll just be one, but
Let's take care of that.
that's what I've been working
Hold
on with this.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, we can certainly hold
See if
off
we get a
on it.
resolution before the next meeting. Chuck will
Yeah.
be back, hopefully Stephanie, and we'll have more voters.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Let's.
Because I will, because it's that one, I will want to make a comment as an abutter,
Sure.
so.
Oh, yeah, well, if you and if you recuse, then it's a little more reasonable to comment as an abutter and get your piece
Yeah,
of
if you want to
there.
comment as a butter, you probably should recuse, yeah.
Yeah,
Or a butter or a member of Lake Samoset. Okay,
No, I'm not a member.
okay, you're not a member, okay. Our next meeting will be May 13th, 2025. The filing deadline is April 25th, so it hasn't happened yet, at noon. And then the next meeting will be May 27th, 2025. The filing deadline is May 9th at noon. And with that, we could take a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I can second.
Thank you, Bob.
all right, Bob? Nick?
Aye.
Mike?
Oh, yeah.
All right. And Rich?
Aye.
All right.
We are adjourning at 7:19 PM.